Welcome to the Shorten Anime channel. Today we'll dive into the latest episode of The Great Ruler. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to support the channel. The Great Ruler Season 1 Episode 56. With Sunner joining them on the road, it brought a lot more joy to them. Both Mu Chen and Mo Ling had a favorable impression of the cute and innocent little girl. Although this little girl was sometimes careless, her antics would often bring delight. Because of Mu Chen and Mo Ling's protection, Sunner was finally able to display her abilities as a rank 2 spiritual array master during the trip. Even Mu Chen was sometimes surprised when he saw the powerful spiritual arrays that were formed so skillfully. The explosive energy from the arrays could directly kill a spiritual rotation, stage late phase spiritual beast. Although the little girl was quite amazing, she lacked combat experience. Upon being disturbed, the speed of arranging spiritual arrays would slow down significantly and become quite unstable. If it was a life and death battle, it was unlikely that her opponent would give her the chance to perfectly form the array. In conclusion, Sunner's potential was quite high, but she still needed to hone herself before she could fully use that potential. But no matter what, a rank 2 spiritual array master was still a considerable threat. If Sunner was given the room to go all out, she could even fight against a spirit stage initial phase powerhouse. Of course, there was still the issue of her needing time to prepare. During their 3-man journey, they attracted a lot of attention. After all, among the 3 of them, Mu Chen possessed a rank 4 symbol, Sunner possessed a rank 3 symbol, and even Mo Ling had a rank 2 symbol. To many individuals, this kind of target was quite tempting. Thus, there were many sneak attacks along the road. However, every single one of them was resolved by Mu Chen. With Mu Chen's current strength, unless it was a spirit stage powerhouse, they would not be able to produce any threat to him. Therefore, the many troublemakers had been unable to disrupt their pace. Roar! In the forested area, the roars of beasts sounded out. Mu Chen stood on top of a tree branch and saw what was ahead. At that location, there were 3 pitch-black rhinoceros. These 3 steel rhinos had the strength comparable to a spiritual rotation stage late phase. Their blood-red eyes were locked onto Mo Ling, who was directly above them. Not too far behind Mo Ling, Sunner looked around hesitantly. Sunner, I'll leave these 3 fellows to the 2 of you. If you can't resolve this situation, we will have to temporarily cancel tonight's dinner. Mu Chen stared at Sunner and smiled. Sunner's strength was decent. If she could mature, she would then be able to perform decently. Thus, Mu Chen was trying to help her out as much as possible. Although Mu Chen had a favorable impression to her, due to her lovely and innocent appearance, her personality was not suitable for this place. Therefore, Sunner had to develop her own strength. This was something that would benefit her. Please be considerate. It isn't only for you, it is also for your brother Mo Ling's dinner. You must perform steadily, otherwise, both of you will starve together. As she heard Mu Chen use this terrible threat on her, Sunner's nose twitched. Although it was a bit frustrating, the little girl felt guilty because her own performance would affect Mo Ling as well. Brother Mu Chen is the worst. He is even more vicious than these spiritual beasts. Although his smiling appearance looks very handsome, this time she had to work hard. After making up her mind, Sunner clenched her fists softly. Light swiftly emerged and condensed into numerous spiritual seals. She closed her eyes and did not look at the vicious spiritual beasts. Then her hands changed between seals, and a spiritual array diagram was quickly arranged. In front of her, Mo Ling was forced into an awkward position by the 3 steel rhinos. He was only at the spiritual rotation stage middle phase, so he wasn't able to defeat even one of the steel rhinos. If it wasn't for the fact that these spiritual beasts weren't intelligent, he would have probably been stomped to death already, but even so, he was still in danger and could only barely hold on. Brother Mo Ling, move aside! Just when Mo Ling couldn't endure anymore, an angelic voice came from the rear. Mo Ling instantly rolled away and slammed his hands onto the ground. Then, his body quickly flew back. At this moment, Sunner had already opened her eyes. A blue light array was formed in front of her, and a violent fluctuation spread out. By the time the spiritual array had been formed by Sunner, her petite face had also turned solemn. She waved her hands and the blue light array released a rich blue light. Wind Spirit's Array! Boom! The blue light gushed out and turned into blades of wind within the light array. The wind blades tore through the air and descended with overwhelming power. The ground was heavily damaged as a result. Dong! These wind blades directly enshrouded the 3 steel rhinos. As the wind blades surged over, they instantly cut the three steel rhinos and wounded them all over their bodies. In the end, they roared and struggled as they fell to the ground. Fresh blood flowed out from their wounds. Mu Chen nodded slightly as he watched from the side. The spiritual array that Sunner displayed should be considered a top existence among the rank 1 spiritual arrays. It had an extraordinary power. Even the spiritual rotation stage late phase steel rhinos weren't able to endure it. Amazing! Moling looked at the three steel rhinos that had been quickly killed by Sunner and could not help but direct a thumbs up to Sunner. Surprise filled his eyes. A spiritual array master was indeed powerful. Mu Chen smiled and walked next to Sunner. He rubbed her head and said, "Well done." After receiving these praises, Sunner's eyes revealed a hint of delight. It was truly easy to make this little girl happy. "Take out your spirit board. You should check how far away we are from your sister." Hearing this, Sunner's hands instantly flashed. A light board the size of 2 palms emerged on top of her hands. On the board, there was a light barrier, and a few lights could be seen within the barrier. This was a position supporting spiritual artifact. Although it required being set up in advance, it would be quite convenient for them to find the other within a certain range. However, Mu Chen would rarely see spiritual artifacts within the northern spiritual realm. This is because spiritual artifacts could only be made by spiritual blacksmiths, and the spiritual blacksmiths in northern spiritual realm were even rarer than spiritual array masters. Even Mu Feng didn't possess any decent spiritual artifacts. Overall, this could only be the case as the northern spiritual realm was too small. Sunner stared at the spirit board for a while and pointed to the north with a finger. "We're close. If we continue to head in this direction, we will be able to find my sister within half a day," she said. Mu Chen nodded slightly. "Brother, Mu Chen." Sunner placed away the spirit board and stared at Mu Chen. Her twin tails danced as she asked, "Are you going to leave once you send me back to my sister?" Sunner was reluctant to part with him. After their interactions with each other during the past 2 days, the little girl felt Mu Chen's kindness and had become quite close to him. This was all despite him being uncompromising in order to force her to train. "Both of us would have to head to the whatever Northern Heavens Hall at some point. We could go together along with my sister," Sunner said with expectations. Hearing this, Mu Chen smiled. He tugged the little girl's twin tails that were filled with vigor and replied, "We'll see when that happens. Come, let's prepare dinner first." Sunner's eyes, which looked depressed due to Mu Chen's vague reply, instantly lit up when she heard the end of the sentence. She hurriedly followed him in excitement. As Mu Chen and the 2 others departed, a few gazes hidden within the darkness of the forest flashed and faded away. On the next day, Mu Chen and the others were able to set off again. Based on the trajectory of Sunner's spirit board, her sister must have been heading over to this direction swiftly. The 3 figures pushed off gently from a tree branch and rushed out from within the forest. They flew off, accompanied by the sounds of winds breaking. However, Mu Chen stopped all of a sudden. He extended both arms and stopped both Mo Ling and Sunner behind him. "What is it?" Mo Ling asked in confusion. Mu Chen's eyes narrowed. His eyes stared calmly at the forest in front of them as he said, "Come out. Don't you feel uncomfortable hiding in such a cramped space?" After Mu Chen's voice rang out, a commotion began in the forest in front of them. In an instant, Mo Ling was surprised to see numerous figures slowly emerging from the forest. There were at least 30 people hiding there, and in the forefront of the group, he noticed 3 familiar figures. The one that was leading the group was Gei Qing, who had attempted to rob them previously, but instead had suffered a loss. Right now, Gei Qing had a red symbol flashing on his forehead. In a few short days, he had actually increased his symbol to rank 3. It seemed that he had robbed numerous individuals. "Oh ho ho, what a coincidence. We actually meet again." Gei Qing smiled as he stared at Mu Chen. His eyes were filled with ill intent. Mu Chen glanced at him and noticed that there were actually 8 individuals who had reached the spiritual rotation stage late phase within the group. As for the rest, their auras were not weak either. It seemed that Gei Qing had come prepared. Moreover, these people had a red ribbon wrapped around their arms. It looked like they belonged to the same team. Currently within this Northern Heavens world, there were already numerous small and large forces. It was evident that Gei Qing had joined one. "It seemed that the punishment I've handed out to you before wasn't enough," Mu Chen said slowly. A hint of coldness flashed through his eyes. He did not like this sort of incessant trouble. "You still dare act arrogant now? Aren't you quite capable of fighting? Then why don't you try fighting against all 30 of us? Gei-ching shouted as he gnashed his teeth. Although he knew that Mu Chen was powerful, he didn't believe that they would fail to get rid of Mu Chen with 30 men. After all, the latter was only at the spiritual rotation stage late phase and had not broken through to the spirit stage. Mo Ling, take Sunner and leave. Mu Chen's black eyes slowly turned cold. A black light flashed out from his palms. Brother Mu Chen! Just when Mu Chen was about to attack, Sunner suddenly pulled on his arm. Then she quietly held out the spirit board on her palm. A hint of delight had filled her dark black eyes. My sister is coming. Mu Chen was stunned. He glanced at the spirit board and noticed a light approaching them at an extremely fast speed. Boom! The light quickly approached this area, and fluctuating spiritual energy instantly burst outwards. A powerful spiritual energy pressure then emitted throughout the area. Mu Chen felt the spiritual energy pressure and frowned. Spirit stage? Mu Chen looked toward the distance. At that location, a figure made of light was charging over at a lightning speed. A dense spiritual energy pressure engulfed the forest at an amazing speed. Guqing and the others who had been originally planning to attack Mu Chen suddenly changed their expressions. They hurriedly turned around and looked to their rear. Coming from that direction, a figure wrapped with spiritual energy was rushing over quickly. Swish! The figure was extremely fast and, in a couple of seconds, she appeared in the sky above the forest. Then her body descended onto a large tree as she revealed her slender figure. At this moment, everybody's gazes were gathered at the location of that girl. She was a beautiful girl dressed in an apricot-colored dress. Her figure was quite tall, and she had a tender face. Moreover, her neck, which was slender and white as snow, gave off an exquisite allure all the way down to her collarbone. Beneath the collarbone was a curvy figure that extended down along with her clothes. A girl like this could only be considered as outstanding. However, she was currently wearing a cold expression and exuding a sharp, dangerous atmosphere, which was so strong that it was able to stop others from approaching her. Sister! When Sunner noticed the girl appear, her petite face revealed a hint of delight, and she hurriedly waved her hands. The beautiful girl dressed in the apricot-colored dress looked at Sunner, and her cold expression quickly faded away. Her eyes immediately softened. Is she Sunner's sister? How pretty! Mo Ling whispered while he looked at the beautiful girl in surprise. Mu Chen smiled. The girl in front of him was unfamiliar to him. It was evident that he had not met her in the spiritual road. However, the latter was certainly powerful. The aura she emitted was probably at the spirit stage initial phase level. With strength like this, she could not be considered weak in the Northern Heavens world. The final step in the spiritual road is truly impressive. Mu Chen sighed within his heart. In the spiritual road's trial, if the earlier steps honed the mind, then the final step was the reward to the trial. That reward would be power distribution based on the honing of the mind. Thus, as long as one passed the final step, it would count as passing the spiritual road. And since Mu Chen was kicked out halfway through the spiritual road, he had only been able to mentally hone himself. But he lacked the power of the final step. Based on Mu Chen's calculations, if he had successfully obtained the spiritual energy empowerment during the final step, he was confident that he would have had the qualifications to enter the three heaven stage. Although he felt a bit of regret, Mu Chen wasn't someone that was indecisive and wishy-washy. Even without the enormous leap of power, he believed that he would be able to catch up slowly and steadily. On the tree, the girl dressed in the apricot dress stared intensely at Mu Chen and Mo Ling, who were beside Sunner. She understood that her little sister was quite innocent. If someone wanted to trick her and sell her off, she would probably be happily counting the money for the transaction. Even against the intense gaze, Mu Chen did not back down at all. His black eyes were calm as a lake. He not only remained unaffected by her strength, but also by her appearance. After a while, the girl slowly retracted her gaze and turned to look at Jiqing. She glanced at the red ribbon. Then her beautiful eyes twitched as she asked, "Are you from the Gay clan?" Jiqing nodded hesitantly. He recognized the girl in front of him, who was clearly at the spirit stage. She was the leader of the Ye clan, Ye Qingling. In this region, she was quite well known. "Scram!" the girl said faintly. Jiqing's face changed slightly. He gritted his teeth and said unwillingly, "If you want to take the little girl away, we will not stop you. However, we have a grudge with that boy over there. So I hope that you will give some face to my big brother, Gei Hai, and not intervene with us." Ye Qingling looked at Gei-ching for a moment. Gei Hai was the leader of the Gei clan. His strength had also reached the spirit stage initial phase. However, Ye Qingling still shook her head and replied, "Since they are Sunner's friends, I cannot sit here idly." Hearing that Ye Qingling insisted on intervening with the situation, Geiqing's face instantly turned ugly. It was evident that he had not expected Ye Qingling to not give any respect to his brother. Swish. Just as Geiqing's expression changed, sounds of winds breaking suddenly rang out from behind. Then numerous figures charged over and appeared at the surrounding space. They completely surrounded all of them. It's the people from the Ye clan. Geiqing and the others were slightly afraid when they noticed the numerous figures. Geiqing, Sister Ye is speaking to you respectfully. You better know what's good for you. Otherwise, we will directly snatch away your symbols and see if your Ge clan is able to respond in turn. A boy shouted out in a cold voice in front of the dozens of figures. The boy had a lanky body and stared at Geiqing with a smile. However, once his gaze swept over to the figure in the apricot-colored dress, a hint of passion and love emerged within the depths of his eyes. Wang Sheng, do you think that our Ge clan is afraid of you? Geiqing grunted as he stared at the boy. The latter was considered to be the number 2 figure within the Ye clan. His strength was only slightly weaker than Ye Qingling. It was said that he was half a step from entering the spirit stage and was considerably powerful. Then why don't we test it out? Wang Sheng curled his lips and replied, "You!" Geiqing gnashed his teeth. How could they dare to attack when Ye Qingling was here? A single spirit stage powerhouse was enough to deal with all of them. After all, a spiritual rotation stage and a spirit stage was far too different. Geiqing's expression changed for a while. Then he finally turned and looked at Mu Chen. Consider yourself lucky this time. Don't ever let me find an opportunity to deal with you. Otherwise, I will not let you go this easily. After he said this, he turned and spoke to Ye Qingling and Wang Sheng. Since you won't give the Ge clan any face, I will have a good talk with my brother about it. Don't think that we are afraid of you. Let's go! Geiqing grunted and waved his hands. Then he led the 30 men back into the forest behind, disappearing from this location. With the departure of Geiqing and the others, the atmosphere in the area calmed down. Wang Sheng also let out a sigh of relief. The Ge clan had numbers similar to them. Moreover, Ge Hai was also at the spirit stage initial phase. If they were to fight, they wouldn't have much of an advantage. Ye Qingling only moved from the branch after she noticed that Geiqing and others were leaving. She appeared on the tree where Mu Chen and the others were standing on. Then her tender face revealed a touching smile as she pulled Sunner's hands and asked gently, "Little rascal, did anything happen to you during our separation?" Sunner pouted with a hurt expression. "I starved for a few days. It was lucky that I met Brother Mu Chen. Otherwise, I would have starved to death." Glutton. Ye Qingling smiled. Her slender fingers could not help but poke Sunner's nose. Then she lifted her head to the boy in front of her. The boy had a smile on his face as he stared quietly at them. Throughout the entire exchange, nothing had broken the calmness within his eyes. "You're Mu Chen, right? I'm Sunner's sister, Ye Qingling. Thank you for taking care of her during the past few days." Ye Qingling directed a smile at Mu Chen and extended her exquisite hand over. Mu Chen also extended his hand and held onto her hand. As their hands touched, Mu Chen could feel a delicate chill, which was as comfortable as holding a beautiful jade stone. However, he did not long for this feeling and gently retracted his hand. "I only took a liking to this girl. That's why I brought her along the way." Behind Ye Qingling, Wang Sheng and the others arrived and smiled friendly at Mu Chen. "Sister, Brother Mu Chen is amazing. He is also like us and obtained a seated entry. Moreover, he's also a spiritual array master." Sunner pulled Ye Qingling's hands and grinned. "Oh?" A hint of surprise filled Ye Qingling and Wang Sheng's eyes. Their gaze swept across Mu Chen's body. A person who was at the spiritual rotation stage late phase was commonly seen within the Northern Heavens world. However, he was truly capable since he obtained a seated entry. As for being spiritual array master like Sunner mentioned, it was neglected since they thought Mu Chen only knew how to use spiritual arrays and wasn't extremely skilled in it. Mu Chen smiled helplessly. This little girl is truly innocent since she just announced his secret out loud. He cupped his hands towards Ye Qingling and said, "Since Sunner has found you, I have no business here anymore. Thank you for rescuing me earlier. I'll have to say goodbye together with my friend." Although Ye Qingling's strength wasn't weak and she had built a considerable force, Mu Chen did not plan on being welcomed by them. Thus, he wasn't thinking of deepening their friendship. "Brother Mu Chen, no!" But just when he muttered these words, Sunner hurriedly pulled his hand. She pleaded, Since we're all going to the Northern Heavens Hall, let's go together. She had already developed some feelings of camaraderie with Mu Chen and Mo Ling after the past few days. Therefore, she didn't want Mu Chen to leave. Brother Mu, since Sunner likes you, why don't you follow us temporarily? You don't have many people with you, so you must not have gathered a lot of information about the Northern Heavens world. We can inform you about it. Ye Qingling smiled as she sent out an invitation. She had thought about it for a while. Mu Chen had helped Sunner out, so it was as if he had done them a favor. And from the looks of things, he seemed to have offended Ge Qing. If it was just Ge Qing, it would be simple to deal with. However, he had a big brother who stepped into the spirit stage behind him. Ge Hai had also participated in the spiritual road, so she knew that he was not easy to deal with. Mu Chen and Mo Ling would probably suffer if they crossed paths with him. Mu Chen glanced at Ye Qingling. He understood what the latter was thinking just from her twinkling eyes and smile. He had never cared about Ge Qing. As for his brother, who cares if he had entered the spirit stage? Would he, Mu Chen, really be afraid of him? Even a heavenly fusion stage powerhouse had been killed by him. Just how much pressure could a mere spirit stage give him? But if Mu Chen refused Ye Qingling's invitation as well, he could be perceived as being considerably uncompromising. Moreover, the final sentence Ye Qingling had said had grabbed his interest. He was quite unfamiliar with the Northern Heavens world, and Ye Qingling had quite the amount of men. Thus, she probably understood it better than him. He could take advantage of this and obtain a lot more information. Then I'll have to trouble you for the next few days. Mu Chen smiled and no longer refused. Then he brought Mo Ling as he descended down from the tree. From the side, a few Ye clan youths welcomed them enthusiastically. Sister Ye, wouldn't we make Ge Hai unhappy by letting them stay with us? Wang Sheng whispered. Let's not mention about the fact whether Ge Hai would attack us because of Ge Qing. Even if it was true, I'm not afraid of Ge Hai. Ye Qingling smiled gently. You shouldn't underestimate Brother Mu Chen. He is quite powerful. It seemed that he also entered the spiritual road. Sunair touched her face as if she recalled the words that Mo Ling had mentioned before. What? Hearing this, Wang Shen was completely speechless. Even Ye Qingling was stunned. Mu Chen had also participated in the spiritual road? Shouldn't a person who participated in the spiritual road be at the spirit stage at the very least? He seemed to be weaker than me. Wang Sheng was filled with doubt. Ye Qingling frowned lightly. She seemed to have vaguely heard of Mu Chen's name before, but she could not recall where. You probably misheard them. Ye Qingling smiled slightly. If he had participated in the spiritual road, Mu Chen's strength was indeed quite low. Moreover, the latter didn't have the smell of someone who came out of the spiritual road. Thinking about this, she came to the conclusion that Sunner had probably misheard them. Let's go. Little rascal, your sister will prepare a delicious feast for you. Ye Qingling pulled Sunner as she walked forward. Sunner, who had originally planned on refuting the matter regarding Mu Chen, instantly had her eyes light up when she heard these words. Then she hurriedly followed. That wraps up the content for today's episode. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel to get notifications for the next episode. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.